Hello students, this is your introduction to our Principles of Design paper collage project. So the objectives for this project is to demonstrate an understanding of the principles of design by creating a series of paper collages. Basically, you're using colors, shapes, and placement to create collages that illustrate each principle of design. And you can get pretty creative with this. And later on, you'll be explaining the use of the principles of design in your collages. So the art materials you will be using are a pencil, color paper, and I have a variety of colors to choose from, a glue stick for gluing, scissors for cutting out the paper, as well as X-Acto knives. So I'll give you a demo on how to use the X-Acto knife properly in our classroom, as well as a ruler, so you need straight lines. So these are some examples here of paper collages. Now we are not quite doing this, but notice how each collage illustrates a different principle. For example, this one here probably is using symmetrical balance because it's visually the same on both sides of the composition. So this is very similar to our project in that we're going to have a series of slices, kind of like from a circle, and each section is going to illustrate a different principle of design. So notice that the layouts are kind of abstract, right? You can create recognizable shapes and representational collages, but you can also keep the layout pretty abstract and simple. Again, this is basically an art exercise. So your collage is going to start somewhat like this with a series of these shapes, and you're going to be cutting them out from a template. And notice that each shape corresponds to a different principle of design. So in this picture here, I created all the backgrounds for my collages. So what you're going to do first is create thumbnail sketches for each principle. So think about how you're going to use different shapes. Are you going to use geometric only? Are you going to use organic shapes as well? How big are those shapes going to be? And how are you going to layer them, right? So they're drawings for each principle of design. Be aware that each slice of the collage should use at least 3 colors. And if you need ideas, you can look at your principle of design practice activities, exercises, as well as your notes. You can also do a little searching on the internet. For example, if I search emphasis using shapes, I get all of these images. Now, they may not all use emphasis, but this gives me a great idea, right? I could have a larger shape placed somewhere in that space and then have these other shapes that are smaller because this is larger, so our eye looks here first. Also noticing the color, right? This looks darker. Everything else around it looks a little bit lighter. Looking at more examples here, this could possibly use emphasis because of the black and white, but also visual movement because our eyes want to follow these lines that are going in a certain direction. So you can do some searching on the internet. So let me show you how to actually label your thumbnail paper. So it looks like this. It is yellow, and let's get a pencil. So using the space provided, create a thumbnail sketch for each principle. This will help you organize the shapes you will need to cut out for each collage. Follow along. So this space is going to use unity. This space here is going to use variety. This area, this collage is going to use contrast. This space here is going to use proportion. Now this one you have a choice right here. You can do rhythm or pattern. Rhythm or pattern for this one. For this space here, you're going to create a collage that uses emphasis. In this space here, we're going to use movement, specifically visual movement. And then right in here, you're going to use balance. but you get to choose the type of balance. So either you're going to use symmetrical balance or asymmetrical balance. You get to choose the type of balance that you're using within this little composition here. Now in terms of drawing your thumbnail drawings, because you're basically making a plan inside each slice, let me demonstrate, okay? So think about rhythm or pattern. Pattern means we're repeating shapes, lines, forms. Rhythm, something is repeating, but there's a sense of rhythm to it. So going off my example here, right? This is just a drawing, okay? It's not going to be what I'm necessarily cutting out from here, but it's a drawing. So let's say I want to make a series of shapes like this. Now this would be an actual piece of paper I would be cutting out to eventually glue onto a background. And let's say it's repeating these circles and it's going to continue this zigzag line, and we're continuing the circles. So there's literally a pattern happening this way as well as a pattern happening that way. I'm just using a pattern here because it's really obvious. So now I can look at this once it's time for me to cut out my shapes. Now I do need to see your plan, and once I see your plan, you'll get my signature. And just remember our project requirements. So we have one collage per principle of design. We need to use at least 3 colors of paper in each collage. Neatness counts. And here's our grading rubric. So again, if you need to double check how your work will be graded, it is right here for you to look at. Okay, so once I've checked that, then we're going to move on to actually creating your paper collages. So you're going to be using a triangle template to trace 8 slices. So you can see here I've got my 8 slices that correspond to my plans. You get to choose the colors for the backgrounds because again, it depends on what you're doing, right? If you're going to create contrast, are you going to have a light color and a dark color, right? So we have 8 slices, which is 1 slice per principle of design, and you're going to cut out the triangle backgrounds using scissors or an X-Acto knife. So let me give you an X-Acto knife demo. So here's a background paper, and this is our triangle template. So you'll need to find one of these, and it says template on there. And I'm going to place it right on the paper and just trace it. So now I'm ready to cut this out, and I'm going to use an X-Acto knife to demonstrate. I could use scissors, but depending on what I need, I'm going to cut this with an X-Acto knife. Now, a couple things about the X-Acto knife is it's sharp, so we want to be careful. When we cut, we're using this blade side. We're not cutting with the straight side, and sometimes the blade actually becomes loose. This is a barrel, and sometimes it becomes loose, and so, you know, if the blade pops out, don't panic. All you need to do is loosen this barrel and find the opening and put the piece back in, twist it, and it's tightened. Now, to use an X-Acto knife in the classroom, I have a couple rules. So when you check it out, be prepared to give me something of value because I need these back. I'm not giving them away. Plus, if you take the X-Acto knife and you're out on campus, it could be considered a weapon. So it's a good tool for us, but not to be used outside the classroom. So I'm going to need to either hold on to your ID card or your backpack or something that you want back. It could be your phone. Don't give me a pencil. I've got pencils. Don't give me your sketchbook. I've got sketchbooks. But once you have your X-Acto knife, you will also need to get a cutting mat, and you'll probably need a ruler because you need to cut straight lines sometimes. So this is a cutting mat, and this is so we're not accidentally cutting into the table. So when we cut with an X-Acto knife, we want to cut towards us. We don't want to cut above or sideways. So I'm sitting right here. And so I'm going to just actually take my ruler, line it up with that line and just cut straight, because we just want to make sure our fingers are out of the way, right? We don't want to cut like this. We don't want to cut like that. So you definitely want to have control with the X-Acto knife. Again, if you are uncomfortable using the X-Acto knife, you don't have to use it. You can just cut with scissors. Now I'm going to cut with scissors for the curve, because the curves are a little hard to do with an X-Acto knife. So now I have my background cut out, and then I can go back to my drawn plan and actually decide, okay, what am I doing with this, right? If this is contrast, maybe I'm going to use these darker colors. I'm going to cut out shapes, right? Like if we look at my example here with what I did for contrast, I did darker colors and then just this white. So I cut out a lot of shapes for that. Keep going here. So as I just mentioned, you're going to follow your thumbnail sketches and create each collage. Think about how you'll layer the shapes. What shapes will you need? How many shapes will you need? I know this is a drawing, but we're translating it into a paper collage. You can also, just layer the paper shapes first before gluing them onto the triangle slices, because if you mess up, then you have to start over. Remember, neatness counts. So when you're working with the glue stick, so if you're working with the glue stick, you can actually get some scrap paper. So for example, if I needed to glue this onto this paper for some reason, I can actually just put my glue on here, get a little messy on the scrap paper, and then attach what I need to attach. So again, there's an example. Once all 8 collages are completed, you're going to actually glue them onto a square, and we're going to glue them together so they look like a circle. So you can see my example that I started gluing down here. This is the square, and you're going to actually need to put them in order of your actual plan. And that's how you're going to finish your project, as well as providing a typed explanation of how you used each principle of design.